How do you have a profound spiritual/religious experience while meditating? Spirituality. Emoji, energy. So, I've been starting to get into meditation and find it relaxing. Since I can't create visual images in my head and rarely have an internal monologue, I find it to be easy for me. But I'm looking for something more profound. The thing I want to do the most is be able to communicate with God/universe and find answers to the questions I have. Is something like this possible? I just don't want to have to resort to psychedelics.
I started meditating because my theistic upbringing didn't seem to work the way I was taught it did. I had been unemployed for 3 years while working on a master's, applied for hundreds of jobs with no call back. I lived in a small one-room barn, for real. During those 3 years, serious depression from no light at the end of the tunnel, hopelessness, etc. So I decided I didn't give a shit what the truth was, but I wanted to know, even if that meant I'd find nothing and become an atheist. I was willing to completely destroy my ego. So I began to meditate with the intention of finding the truth. It took about a week or two for me to finally be able to shut up in my head long enough to be still for an extended period of time. One night, I was about 10 minutes into no-mind meditation and the top part of my body felt like it started spinning one way and the bottom half the other way. Then my awareness of my body and the world vanished and I became one with everything. 2 days after this experience, I got a random call from a bank in town asking if I would like to come to work for them on a fast-track management program. I'd never applied there, no clue how that even happened. I still work there today and have had 7 promotions in the last 10 years. All my depression disappeared after that experience. I honestly don't see how I could ever be depressed again because it fundamentally changed me to my core. I still have all the normal emotions, still have patience issues, but I don't suffer. The experience was less that God spoke to me, there were no words. It was more that I remembered things I'd once known. I'm not going to delve into specifics because people shouldn't chase specific things. Just learn to be still and allow what happens to happen.
So, I've been starting to get into meditation and find it relaxing. Good. Since I can't create visual images in my head. Very good. You can train that, but why would you want to? And rarely have an internal monologue. That is not good. Indulging repeatedly in internal monologues is one of the main reasons one fails at meditation. I find it to be easy for me. Then do the hard part, and whenever you notice you are doing it, wait unfazed and patiently until your mind gives up on it. But I'm looking for something more profound. When your mind is successfully silenced and quiet is the only time when meditation really can happen. The thing I want to do the most is be able to communicate with God/universe. The only one you are conversing with is yourself. All the people I get to know in the past who claim to converse with higher beings or across time or whatnot never provided actual genuine information. No one provided new insights, new science, or new actionable information. It is like having a divine revelation 2,000 years ago and not getting the information that curses are not the cause of illness but germs are. Such a basic but transformative information somehow none of the 1,000+1 gods people claim to have conversed with provided this information in the past. None of them even got the creation of the universe right, which should be easy when one can really talk to a divine being, wouldn't it? Do not gamble your time away. In silence is where meditation happens. The rest is just being amazed at how easy it is for your mind to trick you into taking fantasy for reality. A waste of time and waste of personal potential. And find answers to the questions I have. Why do you think your questions are worth answering? What questions do you have? None of the questions I had in the beginning were the ones that turned out to be important to me. It might be the same for you, too. Is something like this possible? I just don't want to have to resort to psychedelics. You just have to train your visualization and imagination, making it easier for you to see images and have dreams while being awake. Check out exercises that are said to help with having lucid dreams where you become conscious while dreaming in your sleep. Those help with what you want as well, at least it did for me. When you do that, write down everything that happens and that your mind comes up with and be critical about it, otherwise you will waste your time by mistaking fantasy for reality. The mind is a funny thing. producing thoughts for the sake of producing thoughts, but only in the absence of thoughts is where the truly magical things happen that are worth experiencing. Enjoy.
Why would you want to not experience thoughts? It seems boring.
As long as one is aware that these thoughts are all fantasy and not reality, there is nothing wrong with spending time in one's head. It only becomes a problem if one takes it for reality and refuses to check for inconsistencies. You can waste years going on a mission that your fantasy sets you on. Further, you want to experience a calm and more or less unoccupied mind, as it gives rise to a phenomenon that is hidden in you and lays dormant within everybody. Finding and training it is the actual goal of meditation. It leads to wonderful experiences that are way more exciting and pleasing than letting one's fantasy reign free.
Would you expand on why you think not having an inner monologue is not good? I'm very curious, smiley face.
It depends on what you mean by inner monologue. If you mean that you engage with what your mind produces and provide attention and if necessary additional input to allow the mind to solve and resolve problems, there is nothing wrong with it. If you engage with entities produced by your mind and mistake those as real, all bets are basically off. When I was young, I helped people with the latter, and it was strange how convincing these fantasies can get. And while I was trying different things, I also had a phase of 2 weeks of engaging in a mild form of it, but happily, thanks to had additional experience, understood what happened while doing so, and I got easily out of it. Have you experienced already what happens if your mind is not much disturbed with pressing thoughts and able to make room for the actual reason one should meditate?
I can explain what I mean. So it turns out, most people think in words and hear words circulating in their head all the time. I do not have this. I think primarily in chunks, like a web of connected concepts. When I remember things, it's like watching a video of being there. I don't hear that mental chatter. However, I did go through psychosis last year, and when that happened I heard up to 14 voices that seemed entirely independent of me, and that was so scary. But in general it is quite silent, except for music playing on repeat.
When I was young, I once thought that I was a person that has no fantasy. There is a simple exercise to grow one's access to visual and multisensory thinking, as it appears to be the actual way we mainly think. After that, I have had similar experiences like you mentioned. I only heard multiple voices when I was in a form of inner turmoil, and when I started to listen to it, it was mostly people yelling at me when I was little. This happened at different times, and those were often the same memories every time. It went away whenever I did not care that much about it happening. I also tested my fantasy in the sense that I imagined the same place and had even some pets there. The scenes become more and more lively, and the pets developed their own characters and behaviors. I stopped doing it once I noticed what the goal of meditation is. Being amazed about what the mind can produce is natural, but it is a waste of time. There is a level of engagement that is necessary to learn something about oneself, but once that is done, it becomes mostly pointless.
You 100% can. I can personally testify I have had Musrahum-level revelations when praying/meditating. The feeling of knowing God, being in the present, understanding that you can't bottle the moment up for later, so don't try, that the universe is fair, that there is universal love, that life is about letting go will all come in a moment, attached to the logos, the practical message. It's a voiceless voice. You can't make it happen. It is by God's grace that things like this are revealed to help you on your journey. The revelation will not be what you are expecting, but when it happens you will know.
Psychedelics give you a message, and that message is really like a one and done with psychs. What they simply showed me is that the mind is capable of more than I was previously exposed to. I think after that is a digestion and reintegration of such info into present-day modernity. I think it involves then a testing of the universe to see this God in action. It's like God is active in our unconscious, so how could I trust that which I am not aware of more? I think the tests involve some sort of, if I totally stop caring, what will reality be? And there are ways to see how the universe looks out for us, supports us, and carries us. You could always spend 2 weeks alone camping in the woods. Lose yourself and become the world. You could just trust now. Trust the process. Learn to relax to it. Trust. I love telling my mind to wake me up at a specific time in the morning. Then I don't set an alarm, and when I wake up at exactly 6:37 like I asked, it amazes. You'd be surprised how prayer can work. Pray for help from something outside yourself. The old, let it go and it'll come back to you tenfold is a good test. If you let things go, truly and move on, and still have enough awareness to notice it come in your life still in coincidental ways, you'll discover the universe is bigger than us. There's more going on than we are aware. So if you understand that all is truly possible, and we are capable of miracles, what miracle would you like to set into action? Have patience to not react to a situation. Say you had interactions with person A. Interaction 1 went smooth, interaction 2 they slighted you. Normally at this point you would intervene and project your bullshit onto the relationship. This may prevent interaction 3 from ever arising. If we went back and you didn't react all personally to interaction 2, we'd go on to interaction 3, and you'd get more info. That info probably shedding light that their slight of you in interaction 2 was not personal about you at all.
I've read about aphantasics who developed some internal imagery/dialogue in the context of internal family systems therapy. It's brief, shaky, and a bit unclear at first, but it is a skill even people who don't initially have that ability can develop. They started out by writing and letting parts do some of the writing in response to their questions. Things developed from there. They were a meditator, and I expect that played a role. There are styles of meditation that aim to direct our focus and develop the intensity of our thoughts rather than aiming to quiet and clear our minds. That's what you'd be looking for.
Aphantasia is not related to internal monologue. That's a separate thing. I am a multisensory aphantasic who thinks in language without sound. I've not seen any suggestion in science that aphantasics ever gain imagery. The only claims come from extreme anecdotes with no supporting evidence. What you're talking about is development of the use of language, not visualization. Vividness of visualization also naturally decreases as you age, so don't become too dependent on it.
Aphantasia often occurs without an inner monologue. OP mentioned both. The person I know also lacked both, but developed minor, occasional instances of both over time due to IFS practices. Not just language imagery too. He continues to have trouble with internal, language-based thoughts as well, hence writing having been helpful for him, particularly at first. Everyone's inner life is different when it comes to these things. Wasn't sure how the OP's mind worked on that front, so I mentioned it in case it was relevant. And yes, this is a single anecdote about one person's experience. Not everything is transferable, and aphantasia research is pretty slim currently, at least from what I've seen. Individual mileage will obviously vary.
It sometimes occurs without an inner monologue. It is absolutely not a feature of the condition. I've spoken with plenty of people with no internal monologue that are not aphantasics. You're making a mistaken assumption from a narrow selection bias. I've been studying this for over 5 years now. I've spoken with hundreds of people on the topic. Occasional flashes of imagery are normal for aphantasics. That's probably what you've run across. This is all described in the original paper on aphantasia. I recommend you read it. https://side-hub.se/1016/j.cortex2015-05-05019. As you can see, internal monologue isn't even mentioned in it. I've been exceptionally disappointed in how the conditions have been treated in the media. There are so many myths concerning it.
For most people, visualization is rather vague anyway unless they practice visualizing for 5 or 10 minutes a day, which is always a good thing. Also, visualizing a color and holding it for several minutes helps to develop our visualization powers. When we get an idea in meditation or just throughout the day, it isn't normally obvious in which way it arrived. Was it a visual image, or a vocal impression, or a subtle merging of the two? It's usually hard to tell. The impression just arrives complete in the mind. But you don't have to have great visualization powers to benefit from meditation. If you want a spiritual experience during meditation, then prepare by perhaps reading and contemplating an inspiring spiritual passage. Or visualize yourself as the whole of the universe with everything that exists inside you. Alternatively, you could visualize yourself as the focal point of the universal powers, flowing into you as into an empty vessel. There are many inspiring thoughts that we can begin our meditation with, but the important part, and probably the hardest part for many, is when we think our visualization is as complete and satisfying as we can make it. When it becomes a feeling, we must let go of it. Stop visualizing, stop thinking, and remain passive. Become receptive to inner impressions. Not from our thoughts, but from the subconscious mind, which is part of the divine mind. Our objective ordinary mind and thoughts will try to edge in at this stage. The mind does not like being passive and still. It likes to be in charge, and it takes practice and patience to subdue it. To be in that still quiet place where we are sensitive to the more subtle impressions coming from the subconscious mind.
From what I have learned during my experience is, when you close your eyes, your mind is all over the place. There are things happening, but it's difficult to comprehend, simply because of the absence of the right vocabulary within our conscious mind. Basically, what we are experiencing in the moment, what can we understand from it, and how can we understand it better? We collect some of those elements from the experience of masters and form of their ideas. Osho, Sadhguru, Swami Chinmayananda, Swami Sarvapriyananda, J. Krishnamurti are some I listen to time and again. Say, they're a fresh idea in my conscious mind, so next time I close my eyes, I'll try to observe that. If it happens, then good. If not, I just try to observe whatever activity is happening and carry on with my life. There are times when I'm listening to one of their talks and something similar is discussed and strikes a chord, going back to my earlier experience. Things become much clearer and I get a better grasp on the subject by connecting the discussion with my experience. It has rarely happened with me that I'm trying to find a very specific answer, and meditation has helped me find it. Meditation is simply about knowing yourself, and deeper we go into meditation, better our understanding becomes about ourselves.
While it's not the main objective for the average, many of us do have a spiritual approach or goal with it. In my case, I'm not into psychedelics at all, but I practice sober psychonautics, which for me is the best way to start. It's about traveling your inner universe and finding a message behind the ideas and concepts that PPL made you have, but without using substances, so you will find true stuff instead of hallucinations. Although, my main focus with techniques like sigil meditation and more is to connect with my source, chaos, and understand how it manifests. I don't look for answers or what's beyond death, but I look for a deep connection.